find out how that effort is playing out, we will begin once again with CAL FIRE Division Chief Ben Nichols. Chief.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. So to start off this afternoon's update, as expected, with better mapping with the daytime to aid us in establishing exactly where the fire perimeter was today. The fire's size as of this evening is 36,236 acres, 0% contained. That being said, the winds, as forecasted, weakened today. Currently, I'm sitting on Highway 12 and do not really see any movement in the trees, maybe just a little bit around me. But the smoky skies that we're under are a sign that there's not a lot of air movement out there moving the smoke around. So very, very stagnant afternoon out here. Not good for air quality and folks out exercising, but great for us to work on containing this fire and working on putting it out. So we got firefighters out on the line again today, a double shift due to the lack of resources statewide due to the over 25, I believe 27 major fires to date, stretching the 17,400 firefighters deployed throughout the state to their breaking point. But our firefighters are holding the line, digging in and finding that inner strength to protect the communities that we have sworn an oath to do so. So fire did make it to Oakmont and into Annandale early this morning. But there was a valiant firefight by our local firefighters and our CAL firefighters here on the east side of Santa Rosa to save as many homes as they could. And the statement I heard is they've saved far more than they lost. So there was while there were indeed structures destroyed and damaged this morning, it was a win overall for a valiant effort for the firefighters to circle up the resources that we did have and make a concerted attack where we would make the most difference. With that, I will call it end of report.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chief. Has Chief Tony Gosner been able to join us yet? I think he was having trouble. We'll get him on as soon as we can. So let's go to for just an update about the evacuation areas. We have Sergeant Spencer Crum of the Sonoma County Sheriff's Office. Sergeant, you're muted.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
You got it.
Sorry, our latest evacuation, our mandatory evacuations are occurring in the area of Annandale and Bennett Ridge. Those are the latest ones as of a few hours ago. We still have a mandatory evacuation warning up in the Petrified Forest area, Porter Creek Road, Mark West Springs. I just want to say that we have over 68,000 people evacuated in Sonoma County. Our heart goes out to them. I know this is tough on everybody. And I want to thank everybody in Sonoma County and every other place that's hosted residents. I know it's very tough. Rest assured that we have a lot of deputies out there patrolling, as well as Santa Rosa PD. Officers are out there patrolling your neighborhoods. As of about 30 minutes ago, I was just notified of our first arrest made of a person who was in the evacuation zone with no lawful purpose. It's a 17-year-old. He was seen hopping fences in the area of Maria Carrillo High School and was arrested in the backyard of a residence in that area. We are not tolerating anybody being in an evacuation zone who does not belong there. Number one, we're asking everybody to evacuate on those, pay attention to those mandatory evacuation orders. If you hear the high-low sirens, it's time to go. If you don't live in that area and you decide to come around that area and enter an evacuation zone, you are subject to arrest, and we will enforce the law completely and make arrests in that case. We have not put out a press release because I just got word of this, but we will be doing that soon. And again, I just want to thank everybody for their patience. I know this is trying on everybody. Please keep your eyes and ears open and call law enforcement if you need us.
Thank you for that update, Sergeant. Next, we're going to go to Santa Rosa Police Chief Ray Navarro. Chief?
Thank you very much. So not a lot has changed for the police department since this morning. We still have mandatory evacuation zones that are still active and are not safe due to the serious threat of the fires. So as Sergeant Crum has mentioned, we do take these seriously when people come into these areas. We do have officers that are patrolling the areas for looters, and we are taking a zero tolerance approach to this. Everything east of Brush Creek, Mission Boulevard, and Summerfield Road is still closed, and no one is allowed back in right now. We are, again, asking for the public's help when over the next several days as we are addressing the evacuated areas, and it's very dangerous to go back in there, and it gets in the way of the public safety resources who are in there trying to fight the fires. That is all I have to report.
Okay, thank you, Chief. We may have some questions for you in a little bit. And for an update of what's happening at the County Emergency Operations Center, let's go to Chris Godley, the Director of Emergency Management for Sonoma County. Chris?
Good evening, everybody. Chris Godley here. Real briefly, evacuation numbers and zones remain relatively steady as briefed by Sergeant Crum. We are looking at 6 shelters currently operating in the county at this point, as well as we're aware of several others that are being operated by local community-based organizations. We are working with the American Red Cross to open a 7th shelter at Sonoma State University. Our focus remains on community sheltering, communications, and engagement. We are starting initial damage surveys at this time informally. Formal damage assessment, of course, will be conducted by CAL FIRE. And as always, we're urging our residents to touch base with socoemergency.org to receive the latest information, both regarding the evacuations, the maps indicating which areas are being impacted, as well as information and references for such things as where to go for assistance or shelter at this time. That concludes the brief.
Thank you, Chris. We are also pleased to welcome Congressman Jared Huffman, who's joining us today. Congressman?
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Just want everyone to know that Congressman Mike Thompson and I are fully engaged, as we always have been in these situations, to make sure all the federal support available to our community happens quickly. We're working very closely with all of the other elected officials at the state and local level to make sure that happens. I'll just mention one thing and then let you get back to the first responders and others. If you are under an evacuation order and you need to incur expenses to house you and your family until you can get back to your house, save the receipts. If you can document those expenses, either Congressman Thompson or I and our teams would be happy to work with you to try to get some federal reimbursement. It's only a few $100s, but it is available to folks who are subject to those evacuation orders. Thanks a lot.
Great, thank you very much. Yes, save your receipts. And we're also pleased to have with us both State Senator Bill Dodd and State Senator Mike McGuire. Senator McGuire, let's start with you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Goldson, and good evening. Good evening to the Board of Supervisors, Madam Chair, Congressman Huffman, Congressman Thompson. Thank you for your incredible dedication to this county. Always honored to be on with Senator Dodd and appreciate all of his hard work and his partnership, and of course to the Assembly members as well. This fire is the biggest threat to public safety in Northern California. And as we all know, additional strike teams arrived last night, both into the Sonoma as well as the Napa side of this fire. The state continues to be in direct coordination with both the city of Santa Rosa as well as the county of Sonoma. I want to say how grateful we are to Mayor Schwedhelm, his incredible team at the city for all of their work. And the state is going to ensure that all needs are met, not just short term, whatever needs are going to be need to be met here with sheltering and/or long-term with debris cleanup. Senator Dodd and I assure you that we are squeezing every resource out of the mutual aid system. That is our top priority, working with CAL FIRE, and we are grateful for their hard work. And what I want to remind folks is we do have significant fires across the state. One continues to burn north of us with the August Complex fire, where we saw significant structure loss in both Humboldt and Trinity counties last night around Ruth Lake. And as difficult as last night was, again, as Chief Nichols said, he got it right. Firefighters saved much more than were lost. And our thoughts are with those who lost homes last night. My last item, Mr. Goldson, if you did lose your home, please contact your insurance carrier immediately for assistance. And of course, Senator Dodd and I would be here for any assistance that you may need in the weeks and months to come. Thank you, Mr. Goldson.
Thank you, Senator McGuire. We certainly appreciate your experience in these fires. That's what we all have, is experience. And Senator Dodd, thank you very much for joining us. You have some thoughts?
Well, quickly, I appreciate Senator McGuire giving the lion's share of really a state response. The governor did declare an state of emergency today in both these fires in Napa and Sonoma County. And again, this is, people look up in the sky. There's not a lot of resources. We got to remember, it was a call that I made today that, the smoke was just too thick for those big planes to be flying through. They need to be safe as well. We get some clear weather, they'll be back. I know that we did have some helicopters in and around the area today. And again, we will get ahead of this, and we will start the recovery process. Unfortunately, we do have a lot of experience in this area now, and we know how it works, and we'll be there. And I think it's important to know that if anybody, city, county, or any special agency district needs anything, they can call our staff. We're working 24/7 practically, both Senator McGuire's and my staff, ready and standby, willing to help. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Dodd. We also have with us Susan Gorin, Chair of the Board of Supervisors, and Mayor Tom Schwedhelm from the city of Santa Rosa. Chair Gorin, do you have any thoughts you'd like to share? You're on mute.
There you are. Thank you, Paul, and thank you to our federal and state legislators once again, right by our side with the assistance that we need and the heartfelt understanding about what our survivors are going through, all too terrifyingly familiar for us. And I watched the glass fire and the air resources being poured in on Sunday. We were enveloped in smoke, never recognizing that fire would ember and come cascading down the hill and over the ridge the very next evening, in a very similar way to what happened almost 3 years to the day in 2017. And my heart goes out to all of the folks who lost homes. And thank you, Mr. Godley and CAL FIRE, for starting to work on the damage estimates. I know I'm receiving a lot of emails, anxious to learn the fate of their personal homes and their outbuildings, and of course, any livestock or pets that they may not have been able to evacuate. You can please call my office at, or email me at susan.gorin@sonoma-county.org. I'm evacuated in Nevada with a lot of friends and neighbors. We were lucky to get a motel room. They're hard to come by. I really want to thank everybody who is volunteering at our evacuation centers. And we're standing up more evacuation centers today and during these fires because of COVID pandemic that we're experiencing. Kudos to all of the folks in Petaluma and Santa Rosa who are volunteering at the evacuation center and we're working to ensure that we have adequate supplies of personal protective equipment and blankets and food, everything that our evacuees need. And know that there are many of us willing to and able and want to help you with this journey of recovery. And as you know, I know this from personal experience, we will persevere. We are Sonoma Strong. So thanks everybody and a special thank you to the first responders for holding the line in Oakmont and many, many other communities. We did lose homes in Oakmont. We did lose homes in Skyhawk and along Calistoga Road. We will recover, but because of your heroic efforts, there are fewer houses lost. So thank you once again, and to the great work of police and sheriff for evacuating safely. It was very gratifying to me to see the Santa Rosa Police Department whizzing through Oakmont and assuring that everyone was safe. Even though it took me about an hour and a half to get out of Oakmont, I am safe, we are safe, and we will move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. And Mayor Schwedhelm, you have some thoughts for us?
Yeah, thank you, Paul. It's unfortunate that we're meeting this often, but for everyone who is watching it, it's this type of collaboration working together that will get us through this. So as we approach the evening hours, we know there's many questions about the availability of overnight shelters. Mr. Godley mentioned some of that. So amid the COVID-19 pandemic, residents in need of shelter should proceed to a temporary evacuation point, which is different than we've experienced before. And there an assessment and potential shelter referral will be made. So a list of the temporary evacuation points in Santa Rosa and throughout the county can be found at either the county site or srcity.org/glassfire. And on a separate note, to further assist our firefighting effort, our city is asking residents to conserve water indoors and outdoors. And please do not leave your sprinklers running. By reducing demand on the city system, we can preserve water for critical drinking and firefighting needs. Thank you for doing your part to help this firefighting effort. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you for those important reminders, Mayor. We're going to go to questions now, but before we do, I want to remind our members of our media to raise their hand if they have questions, and I will call on you. And before we get to questions, we have another reminder for our Spanish-speaking viewers. Sylvia?
Sí, buenas tardes. Si nos acaban de acompañar, esta conferencia de prensa está transmitida en español en la página del Facebook del Condado de Sonoma. Esta es una actualización sobre los incendios Glass y Shady que están afectando al este de Santa Rosa y al Condado de Napa. Muchas gracias.
Okay, we'll start with Mary Callahan of the Press Democrat. Mary?
Thank you. Can you clarify the number of people under evacuation order and indicate whether you expect any additional evacuations tonight, particularly in the Montecito Brush Creek area?
You were a little garbled, Mary, but your question was mainly about whether they anticipate any more evacuations. Is that right?
Mainly to clarify the number under order.
Could you clarify the number of those who are under evacuation order?
I refer to the more recent numbers provided by Sergeant Crum.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Mary, according to our numbers, we have about 68,000 people evacuated. And as far as more evacuations for tonight, I don't have that answer for you right now. Those decisions are made at the incident command post at the fairgrounds. It's made in conjunction with CAL FIRE meteorologists, and we'll see how the night progresses. It sounds like, from what I'm hearing from the fire folks, and Chief, if you could pipe in here too, it sounds like the winds are down right now, so I don't think there'll be more evacuations, but I don't want to be held to that.
Okay, thanks, Spencer. Nice to see you.
Good to see you.
Can anyone clarify how substantial the housing losses were today?
I can report out on that. So as far as during the after daylight today, the bulk of the structures that have been damaged and destroyed during this fire event have been under the cover of darkness. So daylight allowed us the opportunity to get into those areas. The wind dying down created less opportunity for those homes to be exposed to that ember cast and more critical burning conditions. And so the bulk of the structures that were destroyed and or damaged were over the night last night, and the resources out on the line today are in what we call a tactical patrol. So they have a designated area that they drive back and forth in to monitor for any hot spots that may pop up that unchecked may cause a home to burn down. So a lot of tactical patrol for the resources on the line today, and then line construction for the bulldozers and other resources to contain the fire to begin the process of extinguishing it.
Thank you.
Okay, Nichelle Chavez.
Hello. I had a fire-related question regarding the acreage that was provided at the beginning of the meeting. I'm hoping to get that number again and understand if that represents one or multiple fires. And then the second part of the question has to do about the perimeter for both the shady and glass fires. I'm trying to get a better understanding as to where each fire is located.
So Nichelle, the updated acreage this evening going out is 36,236 acres, 0% contained. And as far as the overall fires, while our investigators are looking into the shady and the other fire that originated near the shady last night, at this point we believe that due to the wind that had gotten down to the valley floor and material burning out from the initial glass fire perimeter, it allowed embers to be cast across the Napa Valley at the point that it came across, which got fires established on the west side of the Napa Valley, which then had the wind that was able to push them to Santa Rosa like we saw last night. So overall, while the individual fires were named differently, it's because that's our department process for new fires that we name those fires. But as our investigators work those fires, I believe that they will be folded under the glass as a whole. So all the two fires that originated on the western slopes of the Napa Valley last night burned together before the shady impacted Santa Rosa last night.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? I believe you're talking about the Boysen fire. Is that the one that you're referring to?
Correct.
Okay. And do you have a better idea as to the perimeter as to which fire is located where across Napa and Sonoma counties?
Well, as I said, the three fires are basically one footprint. If you look at the map, the reason why there's a separation between the fires is because of the Napa River and the vineyards in the valley floor of Calistoga there where the fire originated from. So the group of perimeters that you see is tied to the one glass fire.
Great, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Next, we're going to go to Carl Van Amberg of News of the North Bay. Carl, are you with us?
Yeah, hi, everybody. I had a question for Chief Nichols. Chief, we were out at Channel Drive where the fire, presumably, or part of it, got into Annandale this morning. And we're also at Spring Lake and Annandale this afternoon. And we could see a little bit of the backing fire up above Spring Lake and a little bit more to the south as well in Annandale. The question some of our viewers had after we did a live out there was, is is there a decision to bring over, or will there be a decision to bring over a helicopter to do a water drop because Spring Lake is so available and right there, and it's been used to such good effect over in the Napa Valley with, we saw that, many people saw that on Sunday morning with the glass fire as it was getting underway.
Ultimately, yes, there may be the opportunity for helicopter support there at Annandale Park. But remember that we now have 32,000 acres, 36,000 acres that we need to mop up. And helicopters as a tool are not necessarily best suited to mop up hot spots. They're to knock the heat out of a running fire that allows our ground resources to get in and put that out. The most effective way to mop up hot spots and ensure that all of those hot spots are extinguished out there is a hand tool and a hose from a fire engine. That the helicopter application of retardant or water from altitude, especially through the canopy of mature timber, that there's not a good coating of water or retardant that makes it all the way down to the ground that will soak into the ground and extinguish that hot spot.
Okay,
but you can expect to see helicopters here in the next week or so. Throughout the next.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Carl. We next have a question from Dan Weir of KSRO Radio. Dan, are you there? You might be muted. No? Okay, we'll come back to you. We'll figure that out. Let's go to Yosef Beg from the Press Democrat. Yosef, did we lose you too? Okay. Julie Johnson.
Hi there, is this working?
You're on, Julie, thanks.
Great. All right, I'm gonna shoot two questions out, if I may. One is, I'm wondering just basically what time and at what location did the fire first hit Santa Rosa city limits? And then my second question is, I'm hoping someone can tell me about injuries and burns. We've heard there have been a fair amount of those with residents and perhaps firefighters as well.
So Julie, Ben Nichols here. The first report that I heard of the fire entering into the city limits of Santa Rosa may not be quite as accurate as Chief Gosner would have, but at 1:31 this morning, there was a radio report that the fire was across Highway 12 and into Oakmont. As far as the injuries to civilians and firefighters, I know that there have been, but I don't have solid information for you on those injuries. Those will be coming as we get more information as we investigate those instances during the event. As you might expect, during the initial stages of the rapidly expanding incident, there was multiple rescues occurring at the same time, and so it's going to take time to put that information together.
Thank you. Quick follow-up. Is there a general sense of where the rescues were happening? I know Sergeant Valencia earlier mentioned Los Alamos Road was a place where rescues were taking place.
I don't have specific locations for you. I know that there were rescues that were taking place on the east side of Silverado Trail the first morning of the fire. And I heard rescues yesterday. I just don't have exact locations for you.
Okay.
Okay, Dan, aware of KSRO was having some audio problems, but his question is for Mayor Schwedhelm, and possibly Chris Godley might be able to help with this too. He says, can the mayor re-explain, we're going into more detail, the difference between evacuation or temporary evacuation points and evacuation shelters, and why there is a difference? I think that's a good point you brought up. I think there's a lot of confusion about that.
Right, because it's something new that we didn't experience in 2017. And Chris, I'll let you go more in depth because for me, let's just take Place to Play, which is a temporary evacuation shelter on 3rd Street in the city of Santa Rosa. There will be staff who will evaluate your situation depending upon where you fit in regards to the pandemic. And based on that assessment, we'll give you the appropriate referrals for shelters. Chris, do you have anything to add to that?
No, it is a new concept. We're following along with the state in order to have a uniform approach across the state for wildfires to protect our residents from the COVID-19 virus. The TEPs really are designed to serve as kind of, if you would, that initial landing spot, allow for people to identify what kind of resources they might need, but also that allows us then to identify where people might need to go in terms of if they're seeking shelter, food, or just information. It allows us to kind of keep people socially distant from one another, and then also making sure that we're addressing people to just the right resource. Because as we've talked about, managing evacuations and sheltering in this COVID environment is so challenging. We want to maximize all the resources we have available, and those TEPs are kind of a great screening tool for us to make sure that we really benefit the public as best we can in as short a time of period as we can.
Great. Thank you for making that clarification. Let's next, we're going to go to Ted Williams at KZST. Ted?
And thank you, everyone. Spencer Crum, nice to see you, PIO for the Sheriff's Office. It's been a little while. Question for you. Do you foresee enacting any curfews for civilians around the fire lines?
That is a topic that has not been discussed at all.
Okay. We'll stay on top of that one. Have you done, and this probably goes to the county itself, infrastructure assessments for roads and bridges that might take a little bit longer to get recovery back up?
This is Chris Geil. I could jump on that. That is correct. Our county department, Transportation and Public Works, is already starting to put crews into the field to identify damage to infrastructure, whether it's roadways, road surfaces, safety devices like guardrails, signage, as well as disruptions to water control and storm drain control facilities. After all these fires, I'm afraid we've got a crew that's especially good now at looking for and identifying damage very quickly, because as you know, we've only got a short period of time before rain becomes a challenge, and we want to make sure we get on top of this as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you. And then one last one. How can people help with the evacuees? If they're not an evacuee themselves, how can they best serve those who are evacuated?
Well, this is Chris. I guess I could jump in. The first is, of course, connection. You may know of people that are evacuated or under threat of evacuation. They need to be warning. So it's important, as socially distanced as possible, to make those connections, to let people know they're not alone. There's a lot of significant angst going on right now, if not actual reimagining or reliving of many of the traumas that this community has been through over the last several years. So that human connection is probably the most and the greatest value that can be provided. We're also looking for our community to help support our community-based organizations, our nonprofits, our faith-based organizations that are really stepping up to meet the needs of those that have been evacuated and those that have lost. And the best way to do that, of course, is cold, hard cash. That energy that cash represents allows people to start anew, invest in their lives, and get moving ahead down the road to recovery just as soon as possible.
And I would add, thank you to Transportation and Public Works. You're always on the spot, recognizing the replacement of guardrails and cutting down the dangerous trees that might be in danger of falling on the roadsides. We appreciate everything you do on the spur of the moment. And I know that Supervisor Zane wants to chime in, but every evacuation center needs some volunteers. And if you do have a spare room, even in COVID, and you have a friend who has been evacuated, please offer them your home and your friendship. It is a very, very challenging, emotionally difficult time, and they will need your friendship to get through this, even as they evacuate, even if they haven't lost their homes. And yes, please direct those donations to the Redwood Empire Food Bank, always filling the need for hunger insecurity. So thank you.
I just wanted to add also that you can go on our SoCo emergency website and there's a list of volunteer options, but even better, call the volunteer center. Marin County is taking care of that at this point. You can also call 211 to get information. And Supervisor Gorin is right. There's a real need in terms of food distribution and also in terms of shelter. And again, there's lots of opportunities. The only thing that will limit you, I will say this, frankly, is your age, because we're being very cautious with our older adults right now in terms of their exposure to COVID. So if you are over the age of 65, there will be definite limitations, but there's still opportunities. Petaluma People Services does over 1,000 calls every day to homebound isolated seniors, and they need more callers. So take a look at the website, socoemergency.org. Think about being one of those volunteer callers, or maybe a delivery person for home delivered meals. Lots of opportunity, and really appreciate the generosity of the community right now.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Great job. Great answers.
Yeah, thank you for all those great suggestions. Mary Callahan, you have a follow?
Howdy. I think I'm figuring out how the evacuation number is so significantly different this morning. I wanted to check in and see if there'd been any progress on a north-south fire line or something through Annandale. Can anyone speak to that? Ben, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here, Mary. So looking at the mobile data terminal and the pickup here, we have an engine back behind Spring Lake on the north end and a bulldozer working deeper in the park. We reached out to State Parks this morning to make sure that any bulldozer work that was done would meet what they needed to do for management for the park. But we do have that dozer and the engine company working on those control lines in the park to keep it in the park.
Okay. And can you say anything about, I believe it might have been yesterday that this fire was described as being priority for the state because of the number of structures that were at risk. Can you address that?
I can't speak to the fact that it was the priority fire, but I know that we got a substantial amount of resources that we asked for when there wasn't a lot of resources to give.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go to Rafael Vasquez. Rafael, you have a question?
I do. I actually have two questions. Thank you. The first one is, are there any plans to add additional hours for the warm line? I know that last night when we were reporting on KBBF, even until 2 in the morning, people were reaching out to us because they needed to talk to somebody. And obviously the warm line is only open from 10 a.m. until 7 p.m. daily. Are there any plans by the county or for the city of Santa Rosa to create a similar warm line for people to check in?
I don't know, Chair Gorin or Supervisor Zane, do you have some thoughts on that?
I believe we still have our warm line operational, and I'll let Shirley talk about that. But also, you can call 211 or go on SoCo Emergency for any of the information that you might need about this.
Yeah, the warm line is still going, and we're getting, the calls go up and down depending upon what we're experiencing any given day. Obviously, there's a tremendous amount of people in anxiety and stress right now, and the PTSD that gets triggered with the sirens and the smoke and everything. So we want people to use the warm line. Please, please call it. You can have Spanish-speaking therapists as well as other languages, and it is available 7 days a week from 10 o'clock in the morning until 7 o'clock at night. And I'll give the phone number again, and it's really important that people reach out right now and get the help they need. 565-2652, 565-2652. I would say, as hard as it is to go through COVID and these horrible wildfires and floods and everything we've had, You know, our mental health is so important to take care of. And it's so important for us to realize that we all need one another and we all need help right now. There's not one person that doesn't need help. So make the call. There's a live therapist on the other line to talk to you, to give you referrals, and to just talk to you. And it's all free and confidential. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, if I may, I think my question was misunderstood. The question was, are there any plans to add additional hours when we have situations like the fires from last night, where again we had people at 2 and 3 in the morning still reaching out for support?
No, not that I know of right now, but if there is a need, we'll add the hours. So I promise you, I'll check into that with our Department of Health Services that is basically running the line right now. And if you'd send me an email at my office, we'll get back to you right away on that.
Thank you. And my second question, my last question is, what is it looking like with the changes on the wind and the weather in general? How long are we thinking before this fire may be out?
Chief Nichols, do you want to take that one?
Sure. So the fire conditions are going to dictate the length of time that it takes to put out the fire. As we get deeper into the incident, we get more resources in. We're going to have the opportunity to get this fire put to bed. So right now, with the weather conditions we're having, if those weather conditions continue as forecasted, we should be looking really good by the end of the week.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a question, a couple of questions along this line from Facebook, our Facebook audience. She says her mother was evacuated from Oakmont and she doesn't know where to look for her. Do we have a system for finding people that are evacuated, and where should they be referred? Anybody have an idea on that? Chris, do you have any guidance on that?
This is going to make my blood boil, but I do have something to say about that. If she was evacuated from the assisted living center, Oakmont Senior Living there in Oakmont, then the management has to have, per California law, thank you, Senator Dodd, for introducing that. They have to have basically an emergency evacuation plan with people to care for them in those sites if they don't provide the sites themselves. So they have to actually send caregivers to those sites. She lives independently. That's trickier. And you might want to ask, I think our chief is on here, Ray Navarro, about what you would find.
I understand that folks from the Oakmont Gardens were evacuated by bus. If they needed assistance with evacuation, they were first taken to the Santa Rosa Veterans Building along with the residents of Los Locos Village. And I believe, and maybe Chris could confirm this, that they were then transferred to the Petaluma Fairgrounds to get them out of harm's way. So I would encourage you to outreach to the Petaluma Fairgrounds first. I suspect they are there.
And we'll be visiting that center tomorrow. Paul Dunaway, the Director of Aging, and myself, we're going to be visiting to make sure that they are complying with the new state regulations in terms of evacuation plans and support at the evacuation centers as well. Yeah.
And I will be visiting with my friends and neighbors there and potentially at a number of the evacuation centers. The Oakmont residents are resilient, but we are seniors.
Okay, thank you for working through that. Joseph is having problems with his audio as well. So he asks, his first question is to Chris Godley about the potential capacity at Sonoma State Shelter and when that would be achieved or activated.
Sure. Briefly, Sonoma State is offering two separate sheltering solutions. This is a significant contribution by the state of California, a real significant coordination effort. And Sonoma State has really stepped up again and again this year during the COVID environment, our most recent a fire event near Walbridge. And now they're looking at offering dorm suites, if you would. These are not individual dorm rooms, but instead we can shelter up to 5 or 10 people in a suite. We have about 50 of those that we can provide to the most significantly vulnerable individuals or families that are seeking shelter. And then, of course, the congregate or larger scale shelter operation that the American Red Cross has agreed to spearhead, that should provide an additional up to 300 bed spaces, because we're making use of the university's new and very large sports facility complex. So we believe we can provide a safe environment for up to 300 individuals at that location.
Okay, great. Way to go, Seawolves. Second question is for Chair Gorin. It concerns that about constituents putting themselves at virus risk when they fled the fire and risk getting on buses and going to shelters, more exposure for COVID. Have you heard from your Oakmont neighbors about any angst they're feeling about forced to flee after months of trying to shelter in place? Many of them have been really locked down. Have you heard much?
Well, I've been talking with former neighbors and acquaintances that are sheltered here with me at the hotel, motel, and of course everybody's wearing masks, but we have guidelines. And so at these shelters, everyone is required to wear a mask, and especially at the evacuation shelters, the Department of Public Health has operated and stood up public health units for each of the evacuation centers to check the temperatures and to evaluate the best place for people to evacuate to based upon their, if in fact they may be having a temperature, rapid testing for COVID. We do not want to unintentionally expose anybody to COVID during the pandemic. That would be adding insult to injury. So we know we absolutely have to be careful. I have not heard anything specific from my friends and neighbors, but I know that we've been pretty cautious all along about exposure to COVID and really taking care of our own personal health, because we know that seniors, especially those seniors with underlying medical conditions, are vulnerable to COVID. So of course, we're going to do exactly what we need to do, but the Department of Public Health is helping with that.
Great, thank you very much. And our last question, we'll finish with Julie Johnson. Julie, you have a follow-up?
Hi there, thank you so much. I'm wondering, and this is especially for our fire chiefs on the line. I'm wondering, as people go to sleep tonight in parts of Santa Rosa, how concerned are you about keeping neighborhoods safe and, evacuated neighborhoods? And are we over the worst? Are we under major threat? What is your mindset going into tonight?
For me personally, going into tonight, we are night and day to what we were last night. So last night, we knew that we had the wind coming. We had the wind the night before, so we don't have those critical burning conditions that we were experiencing the last 2 nights. So firefighters across the board here on the glass and shady fires are still got a long road ahead of them, but they are feeling much more confident tonight than we were last night, when about this time or about an hour from now, when the first spot was seen on the ridge, that we knew that we had a long night ahead of us. So we take that responsibility to keep folks safe and feel safe in their homes very, very personally. And all the firefighters on the line are making sure that people can be as at ease and unrest, or I'm sorry, not of unrest, but to feel comfortable in their own home environment.
Thank you.
That's an optimistic note to end on. So thank you very much, Chief. And I want to thank all of our first responders who are with us today. I want to thank our elected representatives for joining us, our staff, and everybody, and those who ask questions. We appreciate your participation and getting the information out there. Just a reminder that we will be doing these press briefings twice a day, once at 11 and once at 5, as long as we see the need. So we will convene once again at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. Until then, be wise and be safe. Thank you all.
Thank you all.